Story 1. My grandmother was afraid of rubber bands. Just seeing them, she would say, "They're horrible. Get them away from me." I have no idea what led to that phobia, and she died 10 years ago, so I cannot ask her. Story 2. My mother was afraid to get her face wet in the shower. She based her fear on the fact that her father used to throw her into the water at Jones Beach when she was a young child to teach her to swim. Throughout my childhood, she washed her hair in the utility sink in the laundry room, then took a shower without wetting her face, cleaning her face at the bathroom sink. I did not realize how unusual this was until I was a teenager. She eventually worked through it in her 40s and was able to shower and wash her hair at the same time. Story 3. I know two people who are extremely afraid of belly buttons. They cannot talk about them, look at them, or even touch their own navel. Story 4. I worked with someone who was deathly afraid of frogs and wouldn't go anywhere near them. His mother had a morbid fear of Santa Claus. Story 5. My significant other really hates cotton wool. He cannot touch it. Something about the way it rubs together. He feels the same about the ice buildup in the freezer. Story 6. I have encountered people with severe balloon phobias a few times. Story 7. I have a strange phobia. I get physically ill when I see the pistil of a tulip. I don't know why, but it really freaks me out. Story 8. I'm petrified of moths. I'm a horror junkie, so not much scares me. But those little creatures will have me screaming bloody murder and running if one even so much as flies at me. I know moths are completely harmless, but somehow they still scare me. To make it even weirder, it isn't the moth itself that I'm afraid of. It's the way they flutter that makes me really uncomfortable. I'm not even scared of butterflies because they don't flutter as rapidly. It's strictly moths and their fluttering that frightens me. Story 9. My friend's daughter was terrified of babies when she was younger. She is 18 now and still uncomfortable around babies, but at least she is not cowering in fear anymore. Story 10. Touching the center part of roses or any similar-looking flower. Also, any animal that has more than 4 limbs. Story 11. I know someone who is really afraid of little people. He won't look at them. I'm afraid of snails and worms. When I was a child, the kids in the neighborhood pinned me down and put snails all over me. I thought I was going to die. Story 12. I worked with someone who had a phobia of eyes. We learned about it when a coworker said at lunch that he had heard someone say how horrible it would be to get a paper cut in the eye. The person with the phobia had an immediate panic reaction and began shaking and crying. Another coworker comforted her and explained the phobia. The coworker who mentioned the paper cut was horrified and very apologetic. We took her to a quiet room to calm down. It was awful. I still feel bad for her nearly 10 years later. I also felt sorry for the man. He was devastated that he had caused such a severe panic attack. Edited to add, please no more stories about eye cuts. I am cringing. It is awful how many people have had that kind of accident. I hope you are okay now. Story 13. Cotton balls, especially when you rub them together and they squeak. Story 14. The surgeon who performed my hysterectomy, a procedure that required entering through the belly button, was afraid of belly buttons. Story 15. I used to work with someone who had a flannel phobia, also called a face cloth in other varieties of English. It felt funny at first, but her reaction when people mentioned them made it clear this was a serious issue for her. Story 16. I know someone with a severe fear of sharks. It is so strong that they become irrationally frightened when swimming in pools, worrying they will be attacked by a shark. They know it is completely impossible for that to happen, but they still get anxious. Story 17. I have a phobia that many people do not understand. I am a big fan of horror, splatter, and exploitation movies, and I have seen many disturbing scenes on television without problems. One insect, however, makes me uncomfortable. I think they are called crane flies in English. When these insects fly, they look like a glitch in reality. They make me very uneasy. I find them grotesque and disturbing. Story 18. I am terrified of worms, larvae, and slugs. The sight of them makes me nauseous and I feel as if one might be on me. It is bad. Every time it rains, the parking lot at work is covered in worms from my parking spot all the way to the door. I call it running the worm gauntlet. It literally makes me gag. Story 19. I've never heard of anyone having this fear, and it's embarrassing. I'm afraid of large water pipes, not the small ones under sinks, but the big pipes in parking garages and sometimes stairwells. In those places, I start to panic and feel like the pipes will hurt me. I hate telling friends because they don't understand and assume it's a joke. Story 20. I knew a bartender who was scared of styrofoam, and Billy Bob Thornton is afraid of antiques, especially furniture. Edited to add, Billy Bob Thornton is also a brony. His Wikipedia page is unbelievable. Story 21. Ecclesiophobia. Literally the fear of churches, but more specifically an aversion to cavernous basilicas and cathedrals filled with frightening Gothic elements and pipe organs. Story 22. I had an acquaintance who was afraid of statues and large figurines. She even appeared on Anderson Cooper's daytime show during an episode about bizarre phobias. She was also afraid of mannequins, and I found a clip. Story 23. Phobophobia. Fear of having a phobia. The anxiety loop must be insane. Story 24. I have a phobia of slugs. If I see even slug slime on a sidewalk, I will walk 20 feet out of the way through grass and mud to avoid that spot. Even writing about them makes me go cold and nauseated. Story 25. My sister, who has autism, is deathly afraid of bananas. Putting one anywhere near her is like summoning a demon. Story 26. Famously, Gary Larson coined anatophobia as a gag for The Far Side. It is the fear that a duck is watching you. Since then, the phobia has been observed in real life, a case of not finding what you do not test for, I suppose. Story 27. I have electorophobia. I am terrified of live chickens and roosters. Story 28. I worked with someone who was so afraid of fish that even pictures of fish made them scream. Story 29. I don't know the exact name, but I knew someone who was deeply afraid of flowers. Story 30. I knew someone who had a phobia of feet. She was a girl, and I was surprised when she told me. I knew about foot fetishism, but this condition does exist and is quite bizarre. Story 31. I talked to a girl on Hinge whose biggest fear is bananas. Story 32. I had a friend who was terrified of moths. They had no problem with butterflies, though. Story 33. I don't think it's uncommon, but I get made fun of for it. Ornithophobia, a fear of birds. I'm okay if I'm in my car or house and see them through the window, but going outside every day is a nightmare because they are everywhere. I've learned to hide my fear when they are at a distance because of the ridicule, but if one comes within a few feet, my fight or flight response kicks in and I can't control it. Story 34. I immediately thought of that woman on Maury who had a phobia of olives. Story 35. Matryoshka dolls are the wooden Russian dolls that fit inside each other. My first boyfriend had a phobia of the dolls. He was playing with a set when he heard his mother had died in the hospital. Story 36. Toast sweat. My mom cannot stand the moisture that forms under toast when it is buttered. She stacks the two slices into a pyramid and waits for them to cool before buttering. Story 37. One of my distant relatives has a phobia of older adults. He simply cannot stand them for some reason. Story 38. I am deathly afraid of fish. I do not eat them, I do not look at them, and I cannot be near them. I have been like this since I can remember. I know they cannot hurt me. It is a purely irrational phobia. Story 39. I once knew a little boy who had a deathly fear of pine cones. Story 40. I dated a man who had a phobia of pool vacuums. He was terrified of them, but when I asked why, he said he had no idea. Story 41. A friend of mine has a horrible fear of frogs. I asked her why, and she said, because they hop on their butts and could be anywhere. It was the could be anywhere part that got me. Like, if I thought frogs could teleport, I would be afraid of them too. Story 42. Hippopotomonstrosesquipedaliophobia is the fear of long words. Story 43. I am deathly afraid of balloons and have been all my life. I avoid parties with balloons and leave restaurants that give balloons to children. Story 44. I've never told anyone this, but I hate articles of clothing dragging along the ground. It freaks me out. I can't stand it and I have to look away. Weddings are hard with long gowns trailing across the floor. The same goes for long ribbons, tassels, and similar items. This is also related to a fear of wheelchairs catching on clothing, rugs, or other items on the ground. Writing this makes my skin crawl. Please tell me I'm not alone. Story 45. I have necrophobia, a fear of dead things. I panic when I am around dead bugs, rodents, and similar creatures. I cannot stand skeletons or taxidermy, so I hate going to natural history museums. On the few occasions I have gone, I have had to stay in the hallway at all times or find the botany room. Dead human bodies cause the most panic. I once attended an open casket funeral and hid as far back as possible. I still feel panicked remembering walking near the casket to offer my condolences to the widow. I am a vegetarian, and people do not understand that I am not tempted by meat at all. Maybe it is not that strange, but I do not hear about it very often. Story 46. The ocean looks so beautiful from a distance. Up close, it's full of raw sewage and creatures that can kill you easily. And if you do something wrong, you can drown and they may never find your body. So fuck the ocean. Story 47. I worked with a man who feared he would float away when standing next to tall buildings, such as when he was on the sidewalk beside a skyscraper. A reverse fear of heights, I guess. He was rather plump, so that would not be a valid concern. Story 48. I'm afraid of those spooky dolls, although I had baby dolls and Barbie dolls when I was little. Not too unusual, I think. What is more unusual is my fear of baby corn. The mini corn on the cob you sometimes see in Chinese food. No, not for me. Story 49. I have a phobia of flamingos. You can't convince me they are not evil and dangerous. I mean, they are extremophiles. Story 50. I don't think it's unusual or bizarre, but I have a fear of lizards, especially the common house lizard. Every time I accidentally touched one, which has happened fewer than 5 times, I cried a lot. Even thinking about those encounters makes me squirm. I might have a fear of reptiles, but I have not encountered other reptiles in person, so I don't know. I strongly dislike seeing snakes on screens. Crocodiles are less upsetting. Story 51. Cotton balls. I am phobic of them. I cannot even use a dry cotton swab for makeup or my ears. Story 52. I would not call it a phobia, but I cannot rest if a cupboard or drawer is open nearby. I find it very unsettling. Story 53. My best friend is terrified of the air dancers, the wiggly inflatable men they usually have in front of car dealerships or similar places, even when she sees them in movies. I know it is a genuine fear, and I usually support her when it comes up, telling her when she can open her eyes and guiding her through it. I still have to hold back my laughter because they seem so odd and ridiculous to me. Story 54. I had a friend with a phobia of buttons. She said that if anyone talked about buttons, she immediately imagined them in her mouth, and it horrified her. She tried to avoid touching or looking at buttons, and as long as she did so, it was manageable. I am not sure it was a true phobia, but it was definitely something similar. Story 55. I have a severe fear of pool drains. It falls under the Reddit subreddit called submechanophobia, and I also have a fear of other submerged man-made objects, but pool drains are my strongest fear. I had to take school swimming lessons, and I was a fast swimmer, so my parents signed me up for competitive swimming because they thought I was very good. I was not a bad swimmer, but I was extremely scared and wanted to get out of the pool as soon as possible. Now sometimes I have nightmares about pool grates. Not that they pull me under and drown me. I just see a single drain underwater in those dreams, and that is it. Just writing this makes my hands sweat. Story 56. I have a variation of trypophobia where uneven edges around holes or white space make me extremely uncomfortable. Some examples are the hole of a Cheez-It cracker with a much smaller crumb inside, kidney stones under a microscope, and certain skeletons, especially snake skeletons. There are more examples, but I am practically falling asleep on my phone, laughing out loud. Story 57. My phobia is pomegranates. I don't know why, but they trigger panic signals in my brain. My family thought it would be funny to give me one as a present on my 14th birthday, and when the surprise triggered a panic attack because of my phobia, they said, "Oh, I didn't realize how serious you were." Story 58. I know someone who is afraid of feathers. She can't sit in the garden because her neighbor keeps pigeons. I'm very scared of shower drains, especially when they make weird gurgling noises. Story 59. A girl I went to school with was afraid of prime numbers. She once had a full-blown panic attack in math and had to leave to calm down. Story 60. For anyone in the United States with a phobia, NOCD is an online therapy company that treats a wide variety of anxiety disorders, including phobias and primarily obsessive-compulsive disorder. They accept many insurance plans. Life does not have to consist of fear. Story 61. I saw a show about phobias on Oprah, and someone was deathly afraid of sprouted potatoes. Story 62. At an old job, my manager told me about a technician who was terrified of packing peanuts but obsessed with Winnie the Pooh. Her coworkers thought it was so ridiculous that they bought her an expensive Winnie the Pooh snow globe she had been wanting. The catch was that they packed it in a huge box filled with packing peanuts, and when she opened it she started crying. Story 63. I am an adult with my own children but am petrified of mascots and people who dress up like Santa Claus. I am perfectly fine with Halloween and cosplay. It does not make sense. Story 64. My pal has a fear of other people's pillowcases. I think that is more a concern about cleanliness than anything else. My sister is terrified of dish sponges. Story 65. I don't know if it is a full-blown fear, but I know someone who gets uncomfortable around half-deflated balloons. Fully inflated or completely deflated balloons are fine, but partially deflated ones are not. Story 66. I'm afraid of people who sleepwalk. It really freaks me out to see what some people can do while completely unconscious. Story 67. Not the most unique, but my kids inherited my anxiety and obsessive-compulsive disorder. Each of them had, at about the same age, a year when they were intensely afraid of bees and hornets, to the point that it was hard to get them to leave the house. I think it is a fairly understandable discomfort, but it is strange that it became a way we discovered each child had anxiety, even though there is no family history of anxiety or allergies, just the bee phase at 6. Story 68. A fear of loose buttons in particular. Edit. I do not have this but knew someone who did. Story 69. I'm terrified of hiccups. This started when I heard stories of people who had them for years, and I feared that would happen to me. Over time, my fear grew into a full terror of hiccups. I will run out of a room if someone is hiccuping. I had to stop watching a movie in which a character was cursed by a witch to have incurable hiccups. God forbid I get them. I have a full panic attack. Story 70. I do not know why, but I am frightened by any fictional character with more than 2 eyes. There was an episode of Masha and the Bear where Masha had an alien version of herself with 4 eyes, and it terrified me. Story 71. I have a phobia of glitter, balloons, and bouncy castles or houses. I do not know why, but it has always stuck with me. Story 72. Everyone thinks it's strange that I'm terrified of hollow chocolate bunnies. Story 73. I am not afraid, but small holes creep me out. This is called trypophobia. Story 74. I am friends with someone who is terrified of crisps and will not even have them near her. How bizarre. Story 75. I am absolutely terrified of taking my socks off. The only exception is when my feet are wet. Otherwise, I immediately dry them and put my socks back on. You should see the tan line. Story 76. Knee phobia is a fear of all knees, including one's own. It must be terrible to be so attached to that fear. Story 77. I know this isn't what you're looking for, but I feel like bitching. Transphobia and homophobia are bizarre phobias. They're fucking stupid and just make life miserable for people. Story 78. I giggle at my sister when she tells me she is afraid that she and her dog will be eaten by sharks. Her husband is fine, but the dog is what is important here. Story 79. I worked with someone who could not bear the sight or smell of bananas. She would bolt from the room if she saw one. Story 80. I used to know a woman who was terrified of little people. Once we were at a bar and a little person came in. She began to have a panic attack. We had to leave. Story 81. I worked with a smart woman who believed that if the soles of her shoes were not black, she would float away. Story 82. I am going to tattle on myself. I am truly terrified of Miss Piggy. I am not easily scared and I watch a lot of horror movies. But for some reason Miss Piggy shakes me to my core. If I see a picture of her while scrolling, it ruins my day, makes me nauseated, and I physically recoil. It has gotten a little better after slow, intentional exposure, but if she appears out of nowhere I will scream. I discovered recently that most anthropomorphic pigs disturb me at a similar level. Miss Piggy is simply the most difficult to avoid. The pig from Sing does not bother me in the slightest. Real pigs disturb me too, which I think is fair. I cannot stand being within a mile or so of a pig farm. The smell is vile, and I feel uneasy knowing there are many pigs nearby. Story 83. I have a phobia of anesthesia. I undergo all my endoscopies and colonoscopies while awake, and I have had masses removed that way. I hate it, and I have no idea where it came from. Story 84. I've never found anyone else with this, but I hate hot chocolate powder, especially when someone stirs it with a spoon. It makes me feel sick and gives me full-body shivers if someone does it in front of me. I used to have to leave the room. While working in a coffee shop, I always had to get someone else to make the hot chocolate. Even the thought of a spoon in the powder makes me recoil. Cadbury's is the main culprit. Story 85. Having trypophobia is the worst because random patterns really make me antsy. Story 86. I dated a guy once whose cousin was absolutely terrified of Beaker from the Muppets. Story 87. I have met only one other person who has a phobia of sticky substances on their hands or fingers. Story 88. I guess this is not unique or bizarre, but I have an aversion to things with holes. They creep me out. What on earth is that? Edit trypophobia. Story 89. My husband's best friend is terrified of people in rabbit mascot costumes. Other mascots are mostly fine, but full-sized bunny costumes are not acceptable. Story 90. I have mayophobia. Even writing or saying the word makes me feel so uncomfortable. Story 91. I don't like styrofoam. I wouldn't say I'm terrified of it, but when I receive a package packed in styrofoam, I begin to panic. I put on rubber gloves and earbuds with the volume turned up so I don't hear the sounds it makes. To me, it sounds like someone screaming. Story 92. Autoplenophobia. I used to freak out in automatic car washes. I took a video that was used in a university psychology class. I conditioned myself with extremely loud metal and now I'm good. Story 93. It is not a phobia because I do not have an intense fear, but I dislike nails and nail injuries. I blame the SpongeBob episode for it. I also dislike accidentally grinding my teeth or hearing someone else grind theirs. Story 94. No one is posting interesting phobia names. Eclophobia, fear of darkness. Acousticophobia, fear of noise, a branch of phonophobia. Acrophobia, fear of heights. Aerophobia, fear of aircraft or flying. Agoraphobia, fear of certain inescapable or unsafe situations. Agoraphobia, fear of crossing streets. Acmophobia, fear of sharp or pointed objects such as needles, pins, or knives. Ailurophobia, fear or dislike of cats. Azoophobia. Electorophobia, fear or dislike of chickens. Azoophobia. Anatodophobia, fear or dislike of ducks. Azoophobia. Algophobia, fear of pain. Anchorophobia, fear of wind or drafts. Androphobia, fear of adult men. Anthropophobia, fear of human beings. Apeirophobia, excessive fear of infinity, eternity, or the uncountable. Haphophobia, also called aphophobia, fear of being touched. Apophobia, fear of bees. Azoophobia. Apotemnophobia, fear of amputees or of becoming an amputee. Aquaphobia, fear of water. Distinct from hydrophobia, a term used in chemistry for aversion to water and an archaic name for rabies. Arachnophobia, fear of spiders and other arachnids such as scorpions. Azoophobia. Astrophobia, fear of thunder and lightning. Atylophobia, fear of imperfection, a synonym of perfectionism. Athazagoraphobia, fear of forgetting, forgetfulness, or of being forgotten. Adicophobia, fear of failure or negative evaluations by others. Autophobia, fear of isolation. That's just a source, Wikipedia list of phobias. Story 95. Flying is common, but the reason was that she might be eaten by sharks. Story 96. One of my friends is afraid of soft taco shells. She believes that if she eats one, it will become stuck in her digestive tract and kill her. She likes tacos, so she carefully removes the filling, eats it, and leaves the shell. Story 97. I have a phobia of shiny floors, such as those at airports or shopping centers. I cannot walk on them. I get dizzy and feel as if I am going to fall. I am reduced to using a walker or a shopping trolley to hold on to when I go to those places. I am also petrified of birds. Small sparrows are okay. Anything else terrifies me so much I will cross the road. Story 98. Arachibutyrophobia is the fear of peanut butter sticking to the roof of the mouth. Omphalophobia is the fear of belly buttons. Story 99. I am absolutely terrified of bears. I have never met one and most likely never will, since they do not live on my continent. Story 100. I have an extreme aversion to rain. I like the sound of rain, and that is about it. I used to joke with my ex-partner that I was a witch because rain makes me melt. I cannot function when it rains. If I have to leave the house, I am on the verge of a breakdown the whole time because I am so uncomfortable. I have kept my child home from school on very rainy days because getting him to and from school would be too much for me. Even with umbrellas, rain boots, and other protection, I still cannot deal with being out in the rain. I like showers, baths, and swimming pools, so I do not have a water aversion. It is only rain. Story 101. I've always been terrified of extraterrestrials. As a child, I would wake up crying to my mother because I had a dream that one was in my room and wanted to kill me. This happened on multiple occasions. I've got it under control as an adult, but images of extraterrestrials still make me jump. I also hate sunflowers. Their central seed area freaks me out and I cannot look at them. Story 102. I have a plumbing phobia. I do not understand it. I have no problem using plumbing fixtures, but if something malfunctions, I go straight into a feral, mindless panic. One time, I almost passed out trying to turn off the water under a sink. I was fine. Then I turned the knob, some water sprayed from it, and I nearly lost consciousness for a second. This does not apply to drains or plumbing without water pressure. I have snaked clogged drains and replaced faucets in sprayers. Before, I cannot make extended eye contact with my hot water heater, even when it is working perfectly. I once ran out of a room without saying a word because a faucet would not turn off. I have never heard of anyone else with this. It is the definition of irrational. I cannot reason with it. My rational mind says it is just a leaky faucet, but my brainstem screams and cries in the corner, giving me the same level of fear as opening my closet door and finding a live panther. Story 103. I have a very slight phobia of porta potties, mainly that they will tip over while I am using one, land on the door, and trap me. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.